we're on Drop Site News. That's Ryan Grimm, and he's not a conservative by any stretch.
Not at all.
I've done some stuff with him. I had a debate with the Libertarian presidential candidate last year, Chase Oliver, on Zero Hedge, and Ryan Grimm was one of the moderators, and I thought he did a great job. And he and I did not exactly see eye to eye on how to deal with the narco-terrorists.
Right.
And I actually remember specifically saying to him in the middle of that interview, he said, "What would you do with them?" And I said, "Well, Ryan, I propose we kill them." And we use violence to do so.
Right.
And he didn't. He didn't. I don't think he was on board with that. But who is on board with that? Donald Trump and the War Department. And that's exactly what our glorious United States Navy has been doing.
Absolutely. No, and I think people don't realize that. I think there's a much stronger case for us having a military presence, military action in Latin America and in the Western Hemisphere than there is in the Middle East.
Yeah, for terrorists. I don't know
for terrorism.
I don't know exactly on board with the regime change stuff, but
you can talk about
just on this issue, yes.
Yes, and you can talk about how well, there's some definite problems with us being ready to fight a near-peer competitor. Like if we actually got into a shooting war with the Chinese or the Russians or something like that, we have to be ready for that. But one thing that we are really good at is special operations, counterterrorism, killing narco-terrorists. We're really good at winning those battles.
Yeah, those fast boats and the semi-submersibles are basically your ISIS pickup trucks
on the water
of the Caribbean. It's on the water. It's the same target set, and you can use the same platform to reach out and touch them.
Yeah, and absolutely. And also one thing I think is really important, because we had a conversation with a friend last night about this.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Right, a senior person in the administration. We had a talk with, and one big reason, the real reason, is not just stopping the drugs, and that's a big one, but also our presence in Latin America, in Southcom, is really also about getting China out of there, right? Because the Chinese have a ton of influence out in there. I mean, the Panama Canal, they practically owned the damn thing for a while, and they've got their claws and their little tentacles everywhere.
They're building port after port after port down there.
And that's our backyard, not
theirs. And in fact, prior to, now we're going far afield, but prior to the GWAT, this was always the point of Guantanamo Bay. The original purpose of Guantanamo Bay, 1898, after the Spanish-American War, it's our oldest overseas base, was to maintain that U.S. Navy presence for power projection in the Caribbean. And so this was the entire point. And by the way, it wasn't just drug runners at the time. We had, again, 1890s, guess what? We had slave ships.
Right.
We had like mercenaries. We had
gun runners.
By the way, pirates, like actual pirates that were running through, gun runners, literal pirates of the Caribbean, that existed, and so I was digging into this. I said, how can the United States Navy be conducting lethal operations in the Caribbean? And I said, do you understand the history of the United States Navy at all?
It's where it started. It's literally where it started. A lot of it
started doing that there, and then off the coast of Tripoli.
Sure.
But anyway, not to get too far off from that. Ryan Grimm. Bunch of articles that, and it's been something that I've been reading. I haven't always covered on the show, but I'll put it out here. An Israeli spy stayed for weeks at a time with Jeffrey Epstein in Manhattan. He had that story out just yesterday.
Right.
I was covering down on Veterans Day, but this is an aide for Ehud Barak. And we knew that Ehud Barak, who had been the prime minister of Israel, was directly tied with Jeffrey Epstein. Here we see again that he was staying for weeks at a time with him. He helped Israel, and he's got a couple other articles, he helped Israel sell a surveillance state to Cote d'Ivoire, so to Ivory Coast, and he worked on directly with the two of them. Jeffrey Epstein, how the sex trafficker helped Israel build a back channel to Russia amid the Syrian civil war. And actually, I'm going to pull up the date on that, because that's probably around the same time that he was talking Syrian civil war. That's probably 2014, 2015 time frame. Let's see. Right here, between 2013 and 2016, working to build a back channel with someone he knew who was tied to Russia during the Syrian civil war. And so you look at this trove of emails that they also have over at Drop Site. I didn't want to overlook those either. It was a huge scoop that they had. And look, if you want to dig into Epstein's operations, you got to find out what he was up to. It's as simple as that.
But Jack, we were reliably told by our betters that Jeffrey Epstein had no connection to foreign intelligence or American intelligence. That's what they told us.
Because that's not what we see in the
it's so strange
here at all. And look, it's as simple as that. And we know, by the way, that so much of the Syrian civil war was an intelligence operation that was run by elements of the CIA. That was run by elements, and here we're seeing Israeli intelligence, and a number of the Gulf states were involved in this, and Turkey, of course, bringing up the opposition to, at the time, Bashar al-Assad.
Right.
So Bashar al-Assad, he was the leader. His father had been the leader, and the Turks wanted to take him out. And it's really interesting how this guy al-Jawlani, who had been the head of a pro-Turkey terrorist group, is now suddenly the guy who's taken over Damascus. It's kind of funny how that works.
It's strange. Wasn't he just in the Oval yesterday?
He certainly was.
He's like they're trying out cologne. It looked great.
Or Monday, yeah.
Monday,
Cologne,
that's right. Yeah,
I did appreciate how Trump asked him how many wives he has. I'll give him
People
that,
don't appreciate how funny that man is.
But at the same time, you gotta be careful with that, because it's one thing to say we'll work with someone, but it's also another thing to say that we're going to prop up a guy who had been up until a couple of months ago involved in terrorist organizations.
I think he was a hand cutter. They referred to him as a hand cutter.
Hand cutter and head cutter.
Oh, and head cutter. Okay.
Yeah, head chopper. And so these are bad guys. These are absolutely bad guys, and it reminded me of when Reagan sat down with the Afghanistan opposition at the time, who would go on to become the Taliban, which would go on to Al-Qaeda, and there was a little thing in New York that happened. Yeah. And so, when you look at all these things and you put it all together, you see the influence of Jeffrey Epstein, you see the direct connection with these politicians, and trying to get connections to more politicians like Donald Trump. And I'm just going to say, it seems like he was trying and failing. It seems like he was trying and failing to build that connection.
Yep.
You really have to ask yourself the question, how many pots was he involved in? And not just foreign policy, but also honeypots.
Yeah.
And it's a real question for all of us, is how much do we know about foreign policy involves blackmail?
Oh, of course. I mean, it goes throughout history. I mean, it's a pretty common thing.
Yes.
It's kind of the easiest method if you really want to compromise some people, is you use sex, right?
I've seen a lot of people point out, they say, well, now that Epstein is off the playing field, how do you, who's running it now?
Yeah.
And one of the best theories that I think I've heard is that you don't need an Epstein now because you have the internet.
True. Like a lot of that.
Right. So all you need to do is pull someone's search history, pull their online pornography history, and it kind of serves the same purpose.
Stay away from that stuff,
in
kids.
many ways. Or if you're involved in any of the, there was a guy in James Talarico who just got, they just found that he'd been following a bunch of OnlyFans models and all this other stuff, and that was out in the public.
Yeah, it's like that was an easy one. Yeah, there's so many of those things. It comes just stay away from that stuff. That's just the easiest one out there.